Hello everybody, it's Professor Parrish. As I said in our Week 7 lecture video, I'm going to come here tonight to talk to you all about MLA, the wonderful and yet dreaded MLA. If you're taking this class, chances are you have taken English 121, I'm assuming, or you've tested out of it. Probably that you've taken 121. However, it probably depends on when you took English 121 and your instructor as to how extensive you all have looked at the Modern Language Association or MLA style of formatting. And I completely understand that. If you took this class, if you took English 121 10 years ago, MLA looked totally different, had a totally different format. If you took it even within the last couple of years, MLA changed in the summer of 2016. So it had a major upgrade. There's been a few upgrades since then even. So if your instructor didn't know about these changes, or if they just chose to ignore them, then you probably maybe need a refresher on the Modern Language Association. And maybe you did use MLA in English 121, but it's been a little while, you need a refresher. I choose now to go over MLA because we are transitioning into our third paper and then our fourth paper after that. So the fourth paper is going to rely pretty heavy on MLA, and the assignments surrounding it are as well. So I want to make sure that everybody is on the same page. So that's what this presentation, this video is going to do. I'm going to post this video along with the Lecture 7 video in our announcements right here. You should be watching the lecture videos there. Week 7 is already posted down here. The video is anyway. It was posted there. Let me find it. Those are all handouts. If I go to resources, let me gather myself up, and I go to links, and then I go down to week 7. There we are. Lecture video. So you'll have to go to resources or go to the announcement sections to see that. But in our resources, in week 1, I included the MLA citation presentation. And it looks like it's been downloaded 2 times. So out of this class of 22, 2 of you downloaded it. Awesome work. Way to go. I anticipate that a lot of you are going to be downloading this much more in the future. I've also noticed only 2 of you downloaded the syllabus, so alright. But 5 of you did the fiction presentation. Let's talk about MLA. So, this first part of the presentation I'm going to kind of just gloss over because it's really stuff that you can read and understand. This has more to do with picking out your sources for paper 4, and when we get to paper 4, your research paper, we're going to talk about it. In the meantime, the idea is picking credible sources, so picking sources that are not biased or that you acknowledge the bias of, that are factual or a personal testimony and are relevant and timely. That's the idea behind it. So oftentimes we do deal with bias with sources, and I think the onslaught of modern digital media has made it very easy for anyone to post whatever opinion they have on whatever topic is out there. And that's great because it allows multiple voices to be heard, to get, outreach and share your opinions, but at the same time, it can become harder to differentiate fact from opinion. And so, as a writer, we are responsible for putting out non-biased and as truthful information as we can, so that we are considered respectful, respected, and having dignity as an author. We want to be credible ourselves. So, if you are using a source and you realize that it's biased, the big thing here is transparency. You want to make sure that your audience understands that if that source is biased, that you're calling it out and saying that it is, but that you acknowledge there's a reason why you're using it. So, if, for example, I used a biased source in my paper, I could say something like, let's say this author's name is Jernigan. I could say, although Jernigan's writing has been labeled as, quote, highly conservative by the New York Times, I feel he still makes a valid point about immigration reform and one that needs to be explored further. So you see, I'm acknowledging that, yeah, he's a biased source, his opinion is not factual, it's more opinion-based, but I need his opinion in what I'm trying to tell you. So as long as you are honest with your audience and upfront with them about it, then that's okay. It's when writers try to be deceptive and use unfactual information as being factual that it becomes problematic. When they're trying to hide something from their readers, that's when we have a problem. So as far as credibility with websites go, I will say this right here in this video, and it's right here in this presentation, just so you all know, Wikipedias, WikiHows, Ask.com, About.com, any types of wikis, they are not credible. The reason behind that is that one, anybody can edit the content, anyone can create an account and add information, and it can sometimes take days, weeks, or even months for moderators or administrators on these websites to notice that false information and correct it. And I will tell you all a true story to back that up. When I was in college, my junior year, I went here to SIC first, and then I transferred to a university. My junior year at the university, I had this guy in my class named Jairus. And Jairus and I, we were having this same discussion with our professor in our English class about how these, and granted this was a little while ago, so it was right when Wikipedias were really taking off. And we're like, well, anybody can go and edit that information. And this was back before Wikipedia even required you to create an account. You could just log on, click edit, and just say whatever you wanted. And our instructor was like, yeah, you've got to be careful with that because of the trajectory of if you put false information in. And my friend Jairus is kind of a trickster. So he said, let's test this theory. So he gets on to Frank Sinatra, the famous 20th century singer. I got onto his Wikipedia page, and at the very bottom of his Wikipedia entry, he included that he was Frank Sinatra's spiritual advisor, and that he gave the eulogy at Frank Sinatra's funeral. Now, it did not get noticed on Wikipedia for several months, but moderators finally did notice, oh yeah, that's not right, and took out the information. However, between the time that Jairus inserted that false information to the time the moderators had taken it out, there had been multiple websites citing Frank Sinatra information that included Jairus Bellamy as Frank Sinatra's spiritual advisor. They went on to being numerous YouTube arguments, stuff online where they were like, well, did you know that Frank Sinatra's spiritual advisor, Jairus Bellamy, said, complete hokum, totally false. And I'm going to pause this to show you all, and it probably won't show up because, you know, why not? But, hold on. Yeah, we talk about websites, okay? And .coms are usually thought of as being, you know, the most generic, the most questionable in terms of their credibility, because a .com or a .net site is a commercial or network site. Anybody can buy one of those domains. I could buy a domain. I could do rachelparish.com and spout whatever nonsense I wanted to. So they're kind of the ones you have to really watch out for. The only exception to that rule would be like something like a hospital, because hospitals often buy .com sites because they are cheaper to run and manage. But obviously if a hospital has a website, it's going to be pretty objective information. But you say, what about a .org? That's an organization site. It should be totally credible, right? Usually, but notice I've gone to worldhistoryproject.org to Frank Sinatra's page on his death. And you will notice, as I read more on down the line, I just saw this. There it is. The eulogy was given by lifelong spiritual advisor and minister Jairus Bellamy. Citation needed. Yeah, you're not going to find a citation because here's Jairus Bellamy. This is the real Jairus Bellamy that I went to college with. That's the guy that is supposedly the man that gave the eulogy at Frank Sinatra's funeral in 1998. He would have been 10. Don't think so. I hope Jairus is okay with me showing his picture there. But that's what I'm talking about. The idea that this site that is, has a sophisticated name, the layout looks okay, is citing false information. Because citation needed, they didn't cite their sources. And now look who looks foolish. So you can see the trajectory of something that's false on the internet. You should be extremely wary as a writer, as an audience member, and as a reader of what's put out there and whether it is certifiable, credible, or whether it's, complete hokum. So, yeah, I asked Jeremy a few years ago if I could use him as an example in my class, and he was very courteous and said yes, he was totally fine with that. But we still laugh about this story because sites like these are just using lies and passing them off as truth because they didn't do the research. So that's why it's important to do so. Now, if your site is an .edu site or a .gov site, I'm not going to question it because it's an education site or a government site. There's a lot more at stake than a .org or a .com. They can't just put whatever out there. They've got to do their research before they put things on their websites. But if I see you using a Wikipedia site or a WikiHow as an example in your paper, I'm going to deduct points for the specific reason I just took time to show you all, because of how questionable the credibility is. So, if you're thinking of using Wikipedia or a WikiHow, just go to the bottom of the page and see where they got their material from and cite the original source. Because all of those wikis and Wikipedia, about.com, whatever, they just borrow information from other actual sources. Sources that you could cite instead of doing just Wikipedia. So that's my advice to you all. Don't use Wikipedia. Don't use about.com. No wikis. Just go straight to the source to get your information. All right. And finally, question whether or not the site looks professional. Is there an author listed? If there's not an author, why would that be? I mean, if it's a hospital site, it makes sense. But sometimes if a site just promoting news articles doesn't want to include an author's name, that might be a red flag. And then you can always look at sources in terms of, is it factual information or is it a story? And if it's a story, there's obviously a little more subjectivity to it. So you can include in there, yeah, I know this is a personal testimony, it's not factual information, but here's how I'm going to use it. And then timeliness, or kairos as it is called. Typically for a paper, you should try to use sources that are not older than 5 years. There are obviously exceptions to this, like if you're giving background information, or our textbook, for example. Our textbook is 10 years, almost 15 years old, and it's still considered credible. So you just got to kind of play it by ear, but just make sure that you're getting the most relevant and up-to-date information that you can. All right, so after that little ramble on sources, and again, mainly I wanted to show you all that for the credibility example. MLA stands for the Modern Language Association, and there are several different formatting groups out there that do different types of formatting for citations. MLA and APA are probably the most popular. APA is the American Psychological Association, and APA has gained a lot of ground because their citation formats are usually used by nursing students, by medical professionals, because MLA and APA focus on two very different things. APA focuses on when information is written. So if you look at APA citations, you'll notice that the date is right up there front and center. They want to know what's the most relevant. MLA, which is the Modern Language Association, is founded by groups of writers, and so it's more to do with credibility and recognition of the author. So the author is always front and center. That's the main difference. And basically this whole concept of citations was started because people wanted to give credit where credit is due. I don't know if you've ever tried to publish or write for yourself. Publishing is a hard process. It takes time. It takes a lot of dedication. It often ends in rejection. and the constant revision and reapplying. So it's a very intricate system to get published. Especially, you would think in modern times it'd be really easy to get published, but it's not. There's a lot of legalese, there's a lot of copyright, there's so much stuff that goes into it that when these people get their work published, it's not fair that somebody just walks up and takes their words and claims them as their own. That's the whole idea behind citations. Now, when MLA started, we only had books, and so that was pretty easy, right? One formula to catch everything. The nice thing about MLA is that pretty much any type of medium that exists now, you can cite in MLA format. The downside is nearly every piece of media can now be cited by MLA, and it's all different formats. So MLA can seem complicated because there's so many different ways we can cite. However, I'm going to show you the most common sources you will probably encounter and how to cite them in MLA. So essentially within a paper, you use MLA in two ways. The first way is that any time within your paper that you reference, or in any paragraph that you reference a source or a piece of research, you have to include, at least at the end of the paragraph, what's called an in-text citation, meaning a citation within the text. And at the end of your paper, you have a works cited page, which is probably what most of you refer to as a reference page, a bibliography. It's just something where you list all of your sources, typically in alphabetical order. I always think of in-text citations as like little text links. So if I see the name Smith in parentheses, that's the in-text citation that tells me, okay, Smith is the author of this quote. And I can go to your works cited page and find where Smith is and find that source. That's the whole purpose of it, is to link up your information to a source. Because if you don't include in-text citations, I don't know where this information is coming from, and I will start to question your credibility as a writer, and your reader should never have to question your credibility. So, in-text citations always sound scary. Students are like, I don't know what those are, I don't want to do it. They're actually really easy. You just have to play a game of what comes first. If I can't do this, what comes second? It's like plan A, B, or C. And if you go that route, in-text citations will be easy. So this is what an in-text citation looks like. It's just a short citation in between parentheses. You don't want something long. It needs to be short, sweet, and to the point. Because if I put a whole link in this citation, it would distract from your paper. It would break the flow of it. So it's just something short and sweet to acknowledge to the reader, oh, hey, yeah, that's where the source is coming from. Okay. But not enough to distract them from moving on with your paper. So with in-text citations, there's two different formats. You either have print sources, which are tangible, you can physically hold them and read them, or online or web documents, which are on this lovely computer here. So if you're doing a print source, you really have two options. And those two options are pretty simple. If your source has an author, but it's not stated in the paper, you just put their last name and the page number. So if I said the article noted, pandas are the cutest animals, I would just have Billingsley here and the number 14 for page 14. If my source has no author, like if it's a hospital site, or if you state the author in the quotation, then you put the title of the text and the page number, or, and I'm going to add this on, or just the page number, depending on how long your title is, because again, we don't want to distract the reader. So instead of the article noted, if I actually say the author's name, Billingsley pointed out, pandas are the cutest animals. Well, I don't want to put Billingsley here again, because that just looks awkward. So I'll put Cute 101, the book title, and the page number. Or I could just put 14 for the page number and be good. That's it. That's all you do for print sources. Either the author's last name and a page number, the title and a page number, or just the page number. That's it. Pretty simple, right? Now, what happens if I use a digital source? Like, let's say, NewYorkTimes.com. Well, again, if I don't mention the author's name in the text, my in-text citation will just be the author's last name. So if I have the article noted, there's no way to beat a Rubik's Cube in under 4 seconds. Billingsley. You'll ask, why didn't you put a page number there? Well, dear friends, there are no page numbers on internet sources. It's all just an HTML web page. So I don't need a page number. For an online source, I just need the last name. Now, what happens if there's no author or if I state the author's name in the sentence for an online source? Well, when that happens, you may think that you want to put in the title, but there's actually a simpler version in the new MLA format. I could just do Billingsley stated, the Rubik's Cube is hard to beat, and just put nytimes.com, the web URL, as my in-text citation. That's it. So for a print source, it's either author last name and page number, title and page number, or just page number. For a digital source like this, you have two options. Author's last name, web page. That's it. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. All right. So those are in-text citations. They're pretty easy. The works cited page takes a little bit longer to construct. Typically, it's in alphabetical order by the author's last name, or if there is no author, by whatever the first word of the citation is. The works cited page is always its own separate page, so if your conclusion just goes into like the first fourth of a page, skip the rest of the page and go to a new page to start your works cited. That way it's its own entity. All right. I've had a lot of students ask, what do I put in italics and what do I put in quotation marks as far as titles go? Well, here is your answer. Things that are in italics are large texts. So book titles, novels, memoirs, TV show titles, entire web URLs, music albums. I mean, those are all things in italics. The things that are in quotation marks are smaller texts. So maybe the chapter of a book. So I could do chapter 1 of Moby Dick, and Moby Dick would be in italics. Short story titles, the episodes of TV shows. So Friends would be in italics, but the one where Ross and Rachel would be in quotation marks. Poem titles, song titles, news journal or article titles, web page titles, these are all smaller parts of a bigger whole. So if they're a smaller part, then you just put them in quotation marks. But if they're the bigger whole, you italicize it. So make sure to go, you can always reference back to this slide if you forget, but that's what it's here for, to show you the differences. Now each medium, like I said, because we cite so many different things in MLA and it's progressed and changed throughout the years, there are different formats to cite, but the formula always starts the same way. It always starts with the author's last name, a comma, the author's first name, a period, the title in quotation marks, the publisher, the date, and the medium. The medium being like print or web, things like that. And it's changed a little bit in the last year. It's altered slightly, but that's the idea anyway. So books, for example, have changed slightly from what they used to be. This is the most up-to-date source. So for a book, like your textbook, a print book that you find, a novel, things like that, you do author last name, comma, author first name, then the book title in italics, the publisher, and the year. So my example is Smith, comma, John, A Day to Remember, Penguin Press, 2012. That's all I need for a book. It's pretty easy. It used to be a lot longer, like you had the medium, you had the publishing city, state. Now MLA is like, no, we don't need any of that. We just want to know who the publisher is, when was it published, what's the title, what's the author. It's like, got it. Keep it simple. A web page is same starting format, author last name, first name, the title in quotation marks, the web URL, which is not the full link, but just what website it is, then the publisher, the date published, and a link. So here's why a lot of students ask, well, these two seem like the exact same thing. And oftentimes they will be, and I'll explain why. So our example down here is Tanya Murphy. So we have Murphy, comma, Tanya. Immigration reform on the forefront. That's my title in quotation marks. My website, my web URL is NY Times. But NY Times is the New York Times online. So my web URL is this, but my publisher is this. So it's slightly different. And then I have my date published and a link to the site. Oftentimes, these two are going to be extremely similar because most companies now, if they're branding themselves and creating their own website, they're not going to make it too much different than who they are. Their company name and their website name are not going to be much different. So if you're thinking, well, I'm kind of repeating myself here, yes. Yes, you are. And you kind of have to. Now, there will be some sources that do not have the same web URL and publisher. They'll be different. And so that's kind of why we have to do both of these together here. But you always italicize the one closest to the title, the web URL. All right. Some things to note about dates and months. We do it kind of like military time. So we do the day first, then the month, and then the year. If you're using a month with more than 4 letters, like September, then you abbreviate it. After the title, you only need the main part of the URL, like here. You don't do the full link until the very end of the citation. And we don't do access dates anymore. MLA used to have access dates at the end. We don't do that anymore. So it's something new that has changed. Journal articles. Journal articles are very difficult to cite because they have a lot of pieces and parts. The nice thing, though, is if you use like our library resources to find journal articles as citations, as sources, then the citations are usually listed with them. So it starts out the same as our other types of sources. We have the author's last name, their first name, the title in quotation marks, the journal title in italics. Then we have the volume, the issue, the year published, and the pages. So here we have Jane Doe. She's wrote Pavlov's Theory, in quotation marks, from the American Psychological Journal, Volume 14, Issue 5, published in 2014 on pages 34 to 56. This one takes me a little bit of getting used to because it used to look a lot different than this, and now they've kind of streamlined it. So if I accidentally count you off on this part for journal entries, please send me an email and remind me because I'm very, very accustomed to grading journal articles like they used to be graded, and sometimes I slip up and I accidentally take a point off when I shouldn't. So just keep me on my toes. But I'm going to definitely try to make sure that I do not count off, because you used to put this in parentheses, you didn't have the PP, and now they've added all this stuff. My tinfoil hat conspiracy theory is that they just want to make more money, so they just publish new editions. I don't know if I'm right or not, but yeah, just keep me on my toes with that. And then, as always, if you've never heard of Purdue OWL, it's a great source to help you, and I will click on the link here. Yes. And kind of exit out of this. So, Purdue OWL is done by Purdue University online. They have an awesome English program, and they have a whole division that just takes care of MLA. Why not? But they've redone this website, and it's actually really cool. They talk about, you can look up citation resources. You'll notice on here you have basic formatting, books, periodical, electronic sources. So it shows you how to cite an entire website, how to do a page, how to cite an image, how to do an article, an online scholarly journal, an email if you want to cite an email, a blog posting, a tweet. I think citing tweets is adorable because you have to put the whole tweet. You put the whole tweet, and then you put the time that it's been cited, and the handle, and it's adorable. I'm like, we should all cite tweets, because they're so cute. And then how to cite a YouTube video, which this has changed too. So, again, if you cite a YouTube video for your paper, and I count off for it, and it looks like this, like it's supposed to, let me know. Because these used to be cited a lot different, and it's taking me a little time as an instructor to get used to the changes. But yeah, they'll show you other common sources that you can cite, like an interview. We talked about, we have talked about this in other classes that I've done, but interviews are the easiest things to cite. It's just the name, personal interview, and the date published. If you do a published interview, it shows you how to cite those. Speeches, lectures, photographs, songs or albums, films or movies, TV shows. This other common sources covers podcasts. It covers a lot of different things. So it can seem a little overwhelming to get on Purdue OWL because there's so much resources, so many. But if you go down here to the MLA Styling Formatting Guide and click which type of source you're doing, it will help you. All right. And yeah, that's MLA in a nutshell. There's so much to kind of soak in, so feel free to rewatch this video, keep it on your queue, save it, do whatever you want with it, just so you can always tune back and remember. And MLA is all about practice. The more you do it, the better you will become at citing MLA. I've cited and corrected many a paper throughout the years, so I'm pretty well versed in MLA, but like I say, they change a few things every other year, and I have to relearn myself. So if you have any questions about MLA, always feel free to ask, because I'm always willing to help answer questions about it. But otherwise, I hope this was helpful. I hope you can go back and rewatch this video for any parts that you need to. Good luck with the rest of the assignments this week, and if you have any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, have a great week, and I'll talk to you all soon.